today's guest has been here before. It is attorney Michele Locke, and she is also a former judge. She worked in family court. She knows she is domestic violence and child protective services and law. And there she is. Let me get her in again. I was listening to an episode a couple of weeks ago. I can see you. And
I can see you. It
yes,
works.
yes. So I was just saying I was listening to your episode on the Brangelina thing, and I tend to not really care about celebrity culture, but that one, the reason it stood out to me was because I posted a thing months ago about Angelina Jolie and how it screamed alienation at me, her behavior. I think it was something where I'd seen a few things before. And yes, certainly I don't know the intimate details of anyone's life, but making comments like, my kids are my only friends and they're still comforting me about my divorce. And even though it's been 8 years, and I'm thinking, this is so twisted. I have never gotten so much hatred on our account. Our followers
Oh,
are
I know
so,
you did.
yeah, I know you know,
I
because
know.
you posted an excerpt of that podcast, and I saw you getting the same minions coming after you, especially because she's associated with the Violence Against Women Act and all of those noble causes. But that doesn't mean that someone isn't doing things behind closed doors or even in front of cameras that are not necessarily appropriate. But before we even get into it, Michele, why don't you formally introduce yourself and then we'll just unleash.
Hi, I'm Michele Locke. I've been a divorce attorney for it's my 23rd year now. So I've been doing it for just a little bit. I'm now a podcast. I have my podcast called Love, Lust, Law, and I'm a mom of three boys. I'm now divorced. I've kind of lived and breathed divorce law my entire life. My dad was married too many times to count. My stepdad is probably the reason why I'm at where I am today in life. He's a wonderful, wonderful man. He was a blessing to our life. But Brad and Angelina spoke to me for so many reasons. And, I'd been following that case all along. And what stuck out to me, and I remember when I was listening to some of the commentary on it, and one of the commentary while the case was going was the judge giving Angelina a warning about if you continue down this path, there are going to be consequences. And as a practitioner, when I heard the specific comments the judge made, I was like, oh, she's alienating, which in and of itself is a hot topic. And if you say alienation, that ignites a fire with so many people, because if you talk about parental alienation, there are kind of like everything in this world today, there are extremes, and the extremes are truly, it doesn't exist. It's only used by abusers to manipulate the family law system. And then there's the other pendulum that is, it exists in every case and everyone's an alienator, and it's neither, but no one wants to talk about. They're somewhere in the middle. So Brad and Angelina are a perfect case and example to talk about it.
Yes, and I'm so glad that you're saying it, because when we first got into the space, it was like, oh, you're not allowed to use that word, and the World Health Organization doesn't recognize it. But Chris and I only deal with high conflict cases, and we specialize in legal abuse, and alienation is baked into it. 22 million people in America and Canada alone say that their ex is trying to turn their kids against them, male and female. It is like every second or less client that we speak to, when we say the title of our new book, which is coming out in January, called When Your Ex Tries to Turn the Kids Against You, or when your ex is turning the kids against you, they're like, that is me. Oh my gosh, you understand it. Nobody believes me. Nobody could think this could be happening. I was the healthy parent. I can't believe this is my life now. And they are absolutely heartbroken. And for the people who say it doesn't exist, why would you think that your abusive ex wouldn't want to take everything from you, including your home, your money, and your kids? And this is, of course, how they do it post separation. So I'm so glad that you have a background in domestic violence and are not so polar, because you've seen it. So
I've tried this case. I've tried the cases. I did a 2-week jury trial on an alienation case. And and it's one of my lines that I actually used in the trial because I don't like calling it alienation because it's the same reason why I think I don't like using the word narcissist because it's such an overused term. If it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, looks like a duck, it's a duck. If you are bad mouthing the other parent, you are engaging in bad behavior, whatever it is you want to call it. If you are trying to align your children to reject the other parent, I don't care what you call it, that's bad behavior. And so when I tried that particular case that I did, I tried to really stay away from it's either the PAS label or the PA label or whatever the label is now. I just stayed away from it. It's like you just don't engage in this type of behavior to harm the relationship with the other parent and the child because both parents, so long as they're good, healthy parents, the child benefits by having time with them. And just because that person left you doesn't mean it's rejection of the child.
Okay, so what you just said, I'm sure is triggering people like good, healthy parents. If somebody was abusive to me, then they're going to be abusive to our child. So how can they be a healthy parent? I need to keep my kid away from that person. What do you have to say about that?
Well, we have to be careful about what we call abuse for a couple reasons. I have seen in litigation, and no one likes talking about this, but I have seen in litigation people make up allegations to use against the other parent. And
No, Michelle,
it's
why would somebody
shocking.
lie? It must only be men that lie, right? Because aren't
Right.
all women victims and men are the abusers? No,
Oh, we're gonna get some hate mail from this one.
I know.
But really, I, it happens in court. Every people that have an agenda will use the tools that they have at their disposal to achieve that agenda. And oftentimes it's false claims of abuse. A lot of times it's false claims of sexual abuse. And the sexual abuse one, and I hate to tell it, but when I have some clients, and this applies, y'all, to men and women. I am not just saying this is to one gender because I've seen it on both sides of the spectrum. But if someone comes in and I see a pattern of behavior with one parent, I can almost always tell my client, heads up, sexual abuse is coming next.
Hmm. Yep.
Almost always. Almost
We
always.
we interviewed an attorney who used to work for CPS, who was a former sheriff in Nevada. Her name is Evan Fair, and she said that now is the most dangerous time for fathers and stepfathers because every time there's a big conflict, out come the accusations.
Listen, yeah, and they come out, and the problem for courts in particular is they're always going to err on the side of protecting the child. And so the minute those types of allegations are made, almost all visitation and possession or access has ceased because
Hmm.
what is a court going to do? They're going to err on the side of protecting the child, which I agree with, understand, it makes sense. But then the parent that's been wrongfully accused has the biggest uphill battle and the most expensive uphill battle to get back to just square one.
Hmm.
And those types of, I've represented women that have accused people of that. And I've also represented men who have been accused of that. And my rule of thumb is always this: if for any reason I find out you're lying on either side, I'm out. But I'm not going to represent someone that makes up allegations, and I'm not going to represent someone that does that to children. So I'm out. But
Yeah.
yeah, so when I saw Angelina's case, and I can tell you when I actually did the podcast episode on it, what stuck out to me most was that the court had to order her to turn over the phone number of the children to their father.
Hmm.
That may have been a first for me. That may have been a first.
Yeah. I mean, I know you mentioned as at the beginning about if one parent is bad mouthing the other, but we see a lot of insidious other behavior, including blocking contact and communication. And a lot of times people might not even realize they're doing it. I did a video like a year or two ago on the one thing that never to say to your child when they're visiting the other parent. For example, sweetie, if you don't feel safe at dad's, you can call me anytime.
No,
Oh my gosh, how could you say something like that? I'm not talking about safety. I'm talking about you putting the message in your child's head that dad might be unsafe. Like, where is that coming from? So these
Well,
little
the other
things,
one is you call and say, "Is everything okay? Are you all right?" Well, if you are starting every phone call to your child while they're with the other parent with that statement, "Are you okay? Are you safe? Is everything?" You are setting up that child to know the other place is unsafe.
right?
Why? Your question just be, "Are you having fun?" It should be the
Yeah.
only thing you say. That's it.
Yeah. That's great. I mean, that's so helpful because I know we have clients who are doing that and not realizing that the impact it has on the child and the relationship with the child. And then when the opposing counsel turns around and says you're alienating, they're like, I would never do anything like that. I don't say bad things about my ex.
Well, they
Why
do
are you
that.
accusing me?
They also set them up for failure, and this is the one that I think is the most subtle, but also can be the most effective, which is you agree to the kid attending an event, a birthday party, a concert, or something on the other parent's time without the other parent knowing. And so that the other parent has two options. They can agree or to become the bad guy with the child. And that is one that happens most often that I will tell you, I don't think that some parents even think is a bad thing. Oh, I'm just trying to make sure Johnny or Susie attend their friends' events. Well, you can't do that without on the other parent's time. You just can't. Because what you're doing is, oh, well, mom or dad said you couldn't go. Not, it wasn't me. It wasn't
Right.
me. I was the good parent. And that happens all the time.
Right. Well, also we see where it's like, well, I'm really friends with the kid's parents. So they're talking to me to make the arrangements because they don't know my ex. So I'm just handling it. We're like, you got to stay out. Stay out of
Stay
that. You're not
out.
the liaison.
You give them their number. Here's the party. Let them know if you want to go. And that way, well, you can tell your child. Because if you're really trying to not be sweetheart, I gave the other parent all the information. That's all I can do. I mean, it's
Right.
all, and you shouldn't even saying that to begin with, right? I mean, you
Yeah.
really shouldn't. But you don't interfere with the other parent's time, and you don't set the other parent up for failure. Or the other one that I see happen in the converse is, well, I'd like to take you to Paris, but your mom won't agree.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, with the birthday thing, what we see a lot of is like, I want my kid to be able to go to the birthday party and it's on my ex's time. But how can I make sure my kid go to the birthday party? And it's like, you
You
can't.
can't. You
You
can't.
can't.
Sorry.
Yeah. Like they will have to deal with that between your child and their other parent. That's you stay out of that. That's none of your business.
The hardest part about divorce and co-parenting that you have to learn, even I'm learning it as I do this for a living and I'm co-parenting now, is you lose control. And that is a big paradigm shift that you're not used to when you're married, because when you're married, you get to control it all. And you get to control what parties they go to. I mean, you are the one, for the most part, running the ship. And when you get divorced, you lose that control. And that is oftentimes a very difficult pill to swallow.
Yeah, that's actually something that a lot of people say it was easier while I was still married because I had control and I didn't have to ask permission for everything. I did all the doctor's appointments. I did all the events. Now my ex is blocking these things to hurt me. And it's like, it's not easy. It's not easy in
It's
these cases.
it is challenging on its best day.
Hmm.
And then
Hmm.
it's a World War III on its worst day.
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
let's
that's what it is.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to hear more about your insights onto the Brangelina thing because I was like, finally, it's not just me who doesn't know their intimate lives, but there's huge red flags every time I just see a headline. I'm like, oh,
Oh,
this is
you know,
horrible.
and I hate to say it, but every time I see something new on those kids, all I can think about is those poor kids. Because again, we don't live in their lives. We don't know what happens behind closed doors. But the most recent headline I saw after I did my episode was Angelina was apparently having real struggles with Shiloh moving out and moving in with an apartment with her own girlfriend. And apparently, from what the new TMZ reports, is Shiloh's trying to get back with and have some kind of relationship with her dad, even though she's legally changed her name. So when she legally changed her name and dropped Pitt, I was like, Alienation 101.
Right.
Number two, because that was been the
Erasing.
child identity, erase, erase, erase. So that was number one. And then Angelina losing her mind, as the reporter said, I have no idea if it's true or not, but her having issues with Shiloh moving out, alienation 101. Why? Because her control is gone. If
Right.
they're under her house, under her roof, she controls everything that happens. And
Right.
the minute that child gets out, the control is gone because
Right.
they're an adult now.
Yeah, and also that we always think about one of the alienation factors of creating dependence in a child. People like this want their children to be dependent on them because then that's their supply. And a lot of times they'll use money. I
Well,
won't
they
pay for
use
this.
money. I will pay for this. I'll do this, and and it's not done for the child. It is done to satisfy whatever emotional enmeshment needs that one parent needs. And if you look at her history and her estranged relationship with her father, then to me it really looks like she is. Um, Repeating history for whatever reason. Like, I think it'd be really interesting to know what the dynamics with, like, what happened between her and her dad, because I know her and her mom were extremely close.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I think that would be an interesting case study to kind of know what happened where. I think I want to comment, Michelle, are you married? No, I was married for 22 years, but now divorced. But yeah, anyways, I think
Yeah.
it's just interesting that their dynamics are it would be an interesting case study on a family dynamic through at least two generations of how that happens.
Yeah, and we've seen it a lot where the cycle still repeats, where somebody has been separated or turned against one parent, and then the same thing happens in their family as well.
Oh, and it does, but uh, the history, because what happened when that case, and I think everyone, well, that's old enough remembers, because I think the divorce has been going on longer than the actual marriage.
Mm.
um was when that they had the incident on the plane.
Hmm.
And I think the feds investigated because it happened in international, I guess,
Why don't you
or
talk
U.S.
about that a
air.
little, Michelle? Just because some people don't know and will assume they haven't read up on this.
So there was an incident on a plane trip back from, I think, across the ocean. I think they were in Europe, and they all flew back in a private jet. And I don't remember where they landed in particular. I should, but I just don't remember off the top of my head. But there was an incident on the plane that was reported. And Angelina called law enforcement because there was an allegation that Brad had become drunk and violent on the plane and attacked her. Children came into her defense, etc. And so, with that flight and the allegation, there were at least two investigations. The feds came in and investigated, and apparently the Department of Family and Protective Services came in and investigated, which is a state agency. So you had a US government agency and a state agency investigating the same incident, and there were never any charges brought against Brad by either of the agencies. And then what is interesting to note was in the divorce proceeding, Brad agreed initially after that incident to some anger management, I think supervised possession or access, and to follow kind of a step up possession or access schedule, which I think there had been some alcohol abuse allegations. And if you listen to Brad now, he's been sober and glad he got sober, and anyways, address some whatever alcohol issues he determined he had at the time. And if you have a bad actor in a divorce case or family law case, that's kind of the pattern you follow. You own it, you get treatment, you get help, and then you rebuild your relationship with the children, so that it's like family reunification therapy.
Hmm.
So there were no charges brought,
Right.
but
You
Brad
you
still,
made that clear too. No assault charges were brought.
no
Why?
assault
That was
charges were
suspicious.
brought. And that was suspicious to me because the entirety of the litigation, at least on the divorce side, was Angelina making allegations that he was basically a violent abuser. And that's why the children were at risk, because he was such an abusive individual. And so what I found interesting is that there were two separate interests, two separate agencies, state and federal, investigated, and there were no charges. And I find it interesting for a couple of reasons, because what people will say is, um, well, victims don't want to prosecute. Victims don't want to prosecute. Victims are victims, and the system fails them. I can understand that viewpoint for so many reasons, because it is quite often that victims don't want to file criminal charges and don't want to prosecute. And I understand the reasons why. But if you look at the case analysis between Brad and Angelina, let's be real clear. She wasn't one of those. She
Mhm.
wanted him prosecuted, and she held on to those allegations throughout the duration of their divorce, and wouldn't agree to some settlement terms because he wanted her to agree to some kind of non-disclosure on the domestic violence, and she didn't want to agree to it because she wants to be able to talk about it for whatever reason. So it was interesting to me because she wasn't one of the victims that keeps it quiet for the sake of the kids.
You
She's
talked
one that,
about power also, power and wealth in terms
yep.
of there's not that much of disparity.
That was the other thing I got some hate mail on, was the, oh, well, Brad's the most powerful actor in the world. And, because so there was the power disparity. I would beg to differ, because if I recall correctly, Angelina was a UN ambassador. I
Mhm.
mean, to say that Brad was the one that had all the power in that relationship would I think be a misassessment of that situation. I think they were both equally powerful in their own dominion, both equally financially um, powerful in their own position, and it wasn't the typical dynamic when you have an abusive relationship where you have a very much a power dynamic that is very much a powerful person and very much a weaker person. To me, they were on the same level. So you didn't have, in my opinion, for what
Mhm.
it's worth, you didn't have the dynamic of the authorities looking at Brad going, oh, well, he's this big, powerful guy, and so we're going to protect him. You had two very powerful individuals. And if I know if I'd been the investigators in that case, I'd be like, ladies and gentlemen, we better get this right,
Mm.
because either way, we're going to have someone unhappy with us. And so that's the kind of investigation where most likely all T's were crossed and all I's were dotted.
Yeah.
Because I can assure you, we probably would have heard otherwise if it hadn't been.
Yeah. Did you find it interesting too that like all the kids didn't want anything to do with him, like a group thing? I mean, there's several
Well,
kids
but
involved.
that's usually what happens in alienations.
That's what I'm saying. That's
I
what I'm
mean, it
saying.
is every single kid rejected
Right.
dad, every single kid, and that is a big red flag, because that is not normal. If there's one kid that's a target, I think the allegation was that Maddox was the target, the oldest son that she
Mhm.
adopted, that he was the target, and so that's why he rejected dad. Okay, you find that to be true, but then there were, they have six, right? I think six total. There
Yeah.
were five others that I lost count. There were
Yeah.
five others that rejected him as well, biological and non-biological, and that is odd for so many reasons. It would have been more typical if it had just been Maddox that had rejected him and the rest still loved him, right? Like
Mhm.
that would have been, to me, a much more credible argument of abuse if it was the targeted kid was the one that rejected dad and the rest were, dad's fine, because I think
Yeah.
that's a more common and realistic dynamic in what actually happens. But when you have every single person rejecting,
Yeah.
it's a red
Because
flag. It's a red
right.
flag. Like it's just another data point to look at in your analysis. And so that's the other thing that people miss is, oh, well, if a kid's rejecting, then it means alienation. No, it doesn't. It is a data point to look at in the entirety of the case to make a decision as to what is the most likely reason something is occurring. That's it.
Yeah. And again, like with if we have the number right, six kids, that's six different relationships that each of them had with that parent. The other thing that stood out to me was the timing. This happened and all of a sudden, like it was complete unequivocal split.
Oh,
They
there
were
was a
all on
line.
one
It was
side.
a line. It was a line in the sand. It was, they got off that plane, and it was, they all took mom's side, and it, and you don't know what happened behind closed doors, but with that kind of stark line in the sand, is if you don't side with me, you don't love me. How could you let him do that to me?
Mhm.
He's bigger and stronger than me. I mean, it'd have been a whole line of, you choose me or you choose him, would have been my guess what was going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, you're with me or you're against me.
Yep.
And a lot of
And
times kids wonder why would a child align with an abusive parent? I'm not going to answer. Why do you think a child would align with an abusive parent?
So natural biology, if you look at even like the CPS cases, when you have a child removed from a house due to abuse, those children often want to go back to their abusive parent because that is their parent no matter what. And so that's why when we talk about alienation and rejection, it is very unnatural for a child to reject a parent. It is just not a natural state. Even abused children want to go back and oftentimes to the parent that abused them. And so for me, the complete line of siding with mom, and I will tell you, I think it's absolutely a form of emotional abuse. And anyone that's been a victim of emotional abuse knows that sometimes it's much easier to get a black eye because those heal, as opposed to the scars that are left when you're told you're worthless every day, or other types of emotional abuse. And so oftentimes kids will stay with the person engaging in emotional abuse. Um, Couple reasons. One, to help their parent, because some kids are what I call like nurturers, and they want to make sure their parent's okay. They feel it's a duty to protect their parent. And so even though that child is being emotionally abused, they still want to be there to make sure that parent's okay. And oftentimes it's because they want the love. And nothing is worse in life as a kid than getting rejected by a parent. I mean,
Mhm.
there's nothing worse than than thinking or believing that your parent doesn't love you. And so they may have thought, dad's going to be okay. We love dad. Dad knows, we know dad loves us, but mom's love is contingent. And we don't want that rejection. We can't stand being rejected by the person that's supposed to be there for everything for us. And so quite often that they will stay with it because that rejection is even worse.
Right. And they also see what's happened to their other parent, that kind of rejection, discard, punishment. And on some level think, I don't want that to happen to me because I'm a dependent. And we know they're often forced to go back and forth. So they're still going to have to deal with that parent. So who do I choose to keep as happy as possible?
Right. Oh no, it is the foundations of children learning how to compartmentalize exceptionally well.
Hmm.
I mean, it is compartmentalization at that age is their means of survival, because they will go, like, let's say they went to dad's house and had a great time. They sure as heck can't come home and tell mom that,
Yeah.
because then they will get rejected by mom. And so that's when they come home. And that's where it happens with these cases. And the kids don't realize it feeds the fight between the parents, because the kids will come home from dad's and say, "Oh, mom, we had a terrible time."
Hmm.
Why? Because if they don't tell mom that, they get rejected. And so that just feeds mom's narrative, because it's what they came home and told me this. So it must be true, without any analysis of actual dynamics of the situation.
Yeah. And I always think about grilling, like when kids go back to one parent, the parent's like, what'd you do with that parent or how was it? And a child has to answer.
Oh, they
But
don't have
if,
a choice. That's
yeah.
why when your kid comes back from the other parent, your only question should be, "Did you have fun?" That's all I
Mhm.
ever ask mine. I don't ask mine anything other than, "Did you have fun?"
Right.
Had fun. Great. Awesome. And that's it.
Right. But if you were the alienating or abusive parent, if you said, did you have fun? And they said yes, they would be punished and rejected because they're not allowed to have fun with the other parent.
Correct. Oh, they absolutely get punished for having fun with the other parent. And the converse is, if they say, "Oh, they had fun," or like if mine comes back and says, "Well, this happened," I'm like, "Well, life happens. I'm sure next time will be even better." I mean, you can't badmouth what goes on that other side, because the kids will figure it out on their own. They don't need you pointing them in any direction. They're not stupid.
Right, right. So, you've been doing this for a really long time. What impact have you seen on kids who have been alienated or turned against one parent?
Lifelong problems maintaining healthy relationships and boundaries.
Hmm.
I mean, that's the bottom line. Because the parent that engages in that behavior doesn't have appropriate boundaries. And so the children learn to not have appropriate boundaries. And
Mhm.
so you will see them in probably also end up in abusive relationships and repeating the cycle. Unless there is some really in-depth therapy that helps them address that. They also learn to compartmentalize. And while compartmentalization can be useful, it can also be extremely detrimental. And so it served the purpose for a period of time, but at some point you have to stop with the compartmentalization of your life. Uh, but yeah, lots of emotional issues. I don't know what the statistics are on substance abuse, but I think substance abuse comes in with so much more other
Mhm.
than just the alienation. But I mean, it's a form of abuse. And so they're going to have unhealthy relationships, unhealthy attachments, and inappropriate boundaries, inappropriate emotional investment, and it is not good for them. That being said, you can break the cycle. You can learn how to know what appropriate boundaries are, but it takes some serious amount of work to figure it out.
Yeah. So we often we know that kids are the real victims. It is a form of extreme psychological abuse. But targeted parents, the parents who have been rejected, also feel like they're the victims because they're dealing with this weird sense of grief. Sometimes we call it ambiguous grief, where if a child had died, the community would be rallying around them saying, "Oh my gosh, how can we support you?" But a parent whose kids have been turned against them, people say, "You must have done something wrong." What is it like for the clients that
Oh,
you deal with who have been rejected? You know that this is a false narrative, but the kids have been brainwashed to believe. Like, how do you support people in this situation? Because there's a lot of people in this situation and they feel so alone.
so it is a very difficult position to be in on the flip side. And you're right. A death you can mourn, you can move on. But when you have a child that is alienated from you or rejects you, whatever phrase you want to use, it is a challenge because you can't mourn, you don't get closure, you don't, it is you are literally in limbo. So, advice I give to clients in that position varies depending on the situation. But one of the general rules that I talk about that I think most people in divorce contested, because like you, I typically only get hired in really high conflict cases. I mean, that's just, it's what I'm good at. I'm good in the courtroom, you know. So because of that, I get a lot of these either rejected parents or they are the parent and the children are rejecting the other parent, some of them for very valid reasons.
Mhm.
The relationship for children is really important for 0 to 18. It really is. It really is. You're teaching them who they are as an individual. You're teaching them how to be an adult. You're molding them and modeling for them how they should be when they grow up. But that relationship post 18 to me is what you don't want to lose sight of because there is so much more after 18. And so when you've got children, so for me, my advice depends a little bit on the age. If the children are 16, 17, 18, I tell them we can go fight about it, or you can wait until about 25 years old when their prefrontal cortex is fully developed and they are separated from that other parent and independent to try and reestablish. I think that's usually with your older teenagers in particular, sometimes the best way to handle it. But with the younger children, because I think it's so damaging to them, if they can afford to fight, my answer is we got to fight because this is going to affect who they are as a human being the rest of their lives if we don't get in and solve it, or at least attempt to solve it. Because when you're a parent and you look back on the end of your life, you don't want to think that you didn't leave any stone unturned to help your children who are in that particular situation. So I think my analysis and my advice to my clients when their children are younger is a little bit different. But for teenagers especially, it's give them the space because at
Yeah.
25, when they are out on their own, they will start figuring it out. And all you can do is hold true to the fact that you know you were a good parent. You know you didn't do anything wrong, and you will be there when they decide you're not so terrible.
Hmm.
But quite, and we're seeing a trend now with older kids just cutting off their parents altogether, which to
Hmm.
me is bizarre, but that seems to be the trend with this younger generation.
Yeah, it's really hard. We have a number of clients who have teenagers who have been turned against them because all of the milestones, especially that senior year, graduation, college, them getting in, not knowing, not being a part of that process, it is heartbreaking for them to see the pictures and the other parents swooping in and being like, "Oh, I'm the one who's taking the victory lap," even though you were the one who did all the work leading up to it. So it is really, really hard to make a
Oh,
decision like that.
it is hard. So I will also give them advice of, I understand they're not talking to you, but send them a text message. I love you, but don't ask for anything back.
Mhm.
Send them a message on their graduation. So proud of you. Congratulations. Like little bits so that they always know that you are thinking about them without putting any pressure on them, because the parent that's causing the rift is putting all the pressure on them. So you want to be the non-pressure parent. Just love you. If you need anything, let me know. Congratulations. Let me know if you need help moving into the dorms. It's just, and if they don't respond, then you just wait, until the next appropriate time. I just think and each person knows their child differently. So for some children, that may be different, and that may not be the appropriate way to do it. But I've got some cases where I tell my clients, just say, "Hey, love you. Let me know if you need anything."
Yeah. So I know, we're taking up a lot of your time, and thank you so much for staying on this. But one more thing, what advice do you have for parents who say, I think I might just give up because the other parent has so brainwashed them?
I've given that advice about you need to walk away, and that is some of the hardest advice to give. And I, it is a completely personal decision. And sometimes it may be the best thing that you could do for your child, because it's not about you. It's not about how it hurts you. At the end of the day, it's always about what is best for our children. And sometimes walking away is the best.
Oh, I
And
don't
that
want to
is,
agree with you.
I know, listen, I know, but,
I don't.
but because I do believe that I do believe time can heal all. And so sometimes walking away, and again, younger children, my analysis is completely different.
Mhm.
But a 16, 17-year-old, walking away for 5 years, 7 years is not necessarily a bad thing, so long as you let them know my door's always open.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
The thing,
just, it's hard, and it's very much case by case.
yeah. Yeah. I always think how the message they've been getting that whole time is that you have turned them away, you're rejecting them. And so for you to really walk away and completely give up, you're basically confirming their abusive parents' message. So when you say teenager, you did say when they're 25 and older. So I feel like you never know what's going to happen. One of my closest friends, her kids were separated for 8 years. They had been turned against her and they came back in their 20s.
Yeah, time really does heal all, and part of the issue, if you keep with the fight, especially the older teenagers, is then it becomes about the fight, and
Hmm.
it becomes about the back and forth and the back and forth, and some people need that fight. And if you just remove yourself from the fight, then they have to turn it to somewhere else. It's most likely going to be the parent at home that caused all of this. And so uh, there is never a good answer as part of the problem,
Right.
because you have someone on the other end that is willing to go to whatever length possible to destroy that relationship. And if they're willing to do that, how far are they really willing to go?
Yeah. They're destroying the relationship and they're destroying your child.
Right. And so sometimes that's why I'm gonna take a step back, but I'm gonna send my kid a letter on his birthday. I'm gonna send him a call, something. I mean, when you say walk away is different in lots of ways, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's
Walk away is
just,
different from giving up.
yeah. I don't think you ever give up, but I
Okay.
think, and you always let them know that you're around. But do you step back and reassess, reanalyze, wait to see what happens? Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you so much again, Michelle. I love talking to you. Can you tell people how to find you?
Oh, I'm easy to find. My website's michelelocke.com. Just remember my mother spelled my name with one L, not two, for Michelle. But I practice in Texas. You can't tell from y'all, but I've been here for a long time practicing. I'm on Instagram at Attorney Michele Locke, and you can also find me on my podcast, Love Less Law, which you can find anywhere you find your podcasts.
Yes. Well, I will continue listening. And as again, I said before, this will not be our last conversation here on.
No, I love these. I love talking to you. Now that I actually can get my Instagram live to work.
I know. Well, it worked beautifully. All right, Michelle, take care and we will talk soon.
Bye bye.
Bye.